All right, so let's start. So I'm Brian O'Mara. I'm Associate Director for Postdocs at NIMBioS and also faculty member here at EB and UTK.
And I'm Mona Pappas. I'm joining remotely from Oklahoma State, but I'm moving to University of Tennessee, Knoxville in January. And I'm future Associate Director of the Spatial Analysis Lab in NIMBioS.
All right, so what questions do folks have about? Oh, and also Chris Welsh is joining us. So Chris is Associate Director for everything. He basically helps make the center run. He's at the core of it. It's awesome. So he knows all the questions that we don't know the answer to about NIMBioS and also in life. So what questions do folks have? Okay, Mona, do you want to talk about a little bit about the position or your understanding of it?
Yeah, so I added some keywords in the postdoc ad. So it was I got to provide a little bit of feedback on the keywords or the foci for this fellowship. So basically, very broadly, we are searching for a spatial modeling person, and the interest of that person can be, of that postdoc can be either theoretical, advancing theory in spatial modeling, or applied. And from the applied world, we've included, as you saw, natural resources, coupled human natural environments, disease ecology, physiology, landscape, macroscale physiology, so on and so forth. So the ad may seem a bit narrow as compared to previous postdoc ads in NIMBioS, because it says spatial modeling, but in reality we are searching for someone. We are searching broadly, so it's not that the field of research is not that restricted as the title may maybe make it sound like. And as I said, I'm currently at Oklahoma State University. I'm moving to Tennessee, so I'll be in ecology and evolution, assistant professor in ecology and evolutionary biology. But then I will also be working with Eric Carr, working with him at NIMBioS, setting up a spatial analysis lab. And so that's one resource that will be available to postdocs, of course, graduate students. So it's a core facility, but related to this search, to this postdoc ad, the lab will have obviously computational power, but also data collection if that's an interest. So we'll have UAS, unmanned aerial system with LiDAR and multispectral sensors, and we'll also have a terrestrial scanner. Again, if one applicant, or if applicants are interested in collecting data, usually, I don't know, postdocs tend to focus on more on data analysis, which is understandable because time is short, and as a postdoc, you're supposed to do lots of analysis and publish a lot. So, but yeah, well,
typically for NIMBioS postdocs, they're actually forbidden from gathering new data.
Oh, see?
I'm not sure if that's still the case for this particular position, but most of the times, yeah, you cannot go get real data.
Yeah, so
you can download it, you can simulate it, but you can't like go out and like look at stuff.
Okay.
Live.
Yes.
Now again, maybe that's different for this position, but that's something to.
Yeah, and that's just one aspect of this spatial analysis lab. There's the computation software help hopefully from me and Eric to anyone interested in using the facility. Any questions?
So I've had questions about start date from people, and it says I think spring, but I've been told that as late as August is okay. So if you're getting your PhD now or not quite yet or something, keep that in mind. It's a 2-year postdoc. You have to be resident here. I mean, you have $3,000 to go travel places to visit people, but they want you to be here physically a lot of the time. Okay, so you can't work remotely from Idaho, that sort of thing. The duration of the postdoc.
And the travel allowance of $3,000 is per year, right? So
I think so. Let me verify that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the
okay.
Yes. A question I got from 2 different applicants had to do with mentors. And I don't know, again, I'm new to NIMBioS. Brian, if you want to address that.
Yeah, so at NIMBioS, you have 2 mentors. So the important thing to realize about NIMBioS postdoc is you are an independent researcher, right? So you write your proposal. It's not, to go work with Mana on her stuff and going to her grant. It's your project, and then you choose 2 mentors to work with you. And that can be stuff like, hey, can you look over my job talk? Is this good? To, I don't understand this math, or I want to learn about some aspect of biology, right? And so you're supposed to meet with each of your mentors at least every 2 weeks. So you can go to the lab meetings, things like that. And so basically they're just sort of generally mentor you in general. And if they have overlap in your project, so if you're working on spatial stuff, Mona will be the go-to person for that, right? So you can go talk to her. But you don't necessarily have to work with her. You could work with other people too. And so you need both a math and a bio person. You don't have to identify those once you come here, though. So if you don't know someone right now, that's okay. It's worth figuring out if there are people here you'd like to work with, but there probably are. Once you come here, then I can say, oh, yeah, work with Mona, she's great. Oh, no, don't work with Jack. He'll, steal your data. Not that we have no Jack here, so I can say that.
So there was a question that was sent to us just now when you were talking. And the question, I think it was, do the applicants need to contact potential mentors before they submit the proposal? I can get to that question that was just sent. Let me see if I can get to it and read it.
Yeah, so you don't have to contact your mentors. I mean, you don't need to identify them before you apply. It's not like applying to grad school where oftentimes you have to have someone who will agree to accept you in his lab. You can choose them once you get here. However, if you do have someone you want to work with, you could email them and talk to them about it, and they ask for feedback on your proposal and that sort of thing. That's perfectly okay. Yeah, I've had people who came and said, "Hey, Brian, I'm here." Like, great. Who are you?
And you should know that there are plenty of spatially oriented and enabled professors on campus. So those of you who would like to have an idea of potential mentors before applying or as you are applying, do check geography department. And we have interactions with geography for the spatial analysis lab. Geography department is supporting the spatial analysis lab. And so there are close connections between EB, geography, and NIMBioS. So do check for possibilities there. If you are interested in more of the kind of from the econometrics field, there are economists on campus. So plenty of options.
Yeah, and NIMBioS has a list of affiliated faculty, and so you can choose from that list, but also you can choose from any faculty member, and they can become an affiliate and interact that way. So don't feel you're limited to those who are already affiliates of NIMBioS. We can bring more into the fold. This is probably more your question, Mona.
Well, the ad is broad. However, it is NIMBioS. So ideally, and the mentors, you will have 2 mentors. Well, the postdoc will have 2 mentors, one more math computational oriented and one more biology oriented. So ideally, the proposal has a merger or synergy or a combination of biology and math. And math can be broadly defined, can be very, can be an empirical model that you are developing, but can also be using models, any kind of computational approach to analyzing biological data and trying to answer biologically meaningful questions. So we want somebody who can speak to both computational and biologically oriented folks. And I have another. I finally opened the chat window, and there is another question that is kind of related to yours. What are you looking for in a successful candidate? In successful candidates, excellent proposal, high publication record, other factors. And this is a little difficult for me to answer because I have not been part of evaluating postdoc applications yet, because I'm new to NIMBioS. And I don't know, Brian, if you would like to answer those questions or that.
So I haven't been in the room for the deciding of who gets the postdoc who gets the positions. I handle after people are admitted, handling integrating into Knoxville and that sort of thing. My sense from talking to people is that first is the proposals a big thing. That's the main focus, and then also evidence that you will be successful, right? So publications are one way of showing that, but also showing that you have the mathematical expertise needed or the biological expertise needed. But I wouldn't rule yourself out. I wouldn't say like, oh, I only have X number of publications, I'm not good enough to apply. Do apply anyway, because that's a general thing in life, right? We're asking people who, have 3 publications get a job, and someone with 40 doesn't, which is because they're the right publications, right? So apply.
Yes. And I would agree that the proposal is kind of the major deciding factor. So if the proposal is in line with the what we are searching for, the spatial modeling ad, and if it has a good mix, a decent mix of both computational math and biology, I would say that's very very important. So the proposal itself is quite important. You may not have, I don't know, an extensive publication record, but if your proposal, the work you are proposing to do, is deemed important, broad impacts, so on and so forth, then yes, it's a successful candidate. Okay, there's another question on the chat there.
So the question is, the application instructions mentioned pitching outreach ideas. You're looking for anything in particular with respect to that? I don't think we have any particular ideas. I mean, NIMBioS does a variety of outreach activities, and so you could look and see what we do and what could be successful in that, what you could build on. So for example, postdocs usually go to do a visit once or twice a year to an HBCU or a place like that to talk about science. Postdocs have gone to SACNES, talk to students. So we do lots of women in science things or women in math things with, I think, middle school girls, as well as other ages. So there's all existing initiatives that you can build on. Biology in a Box, where we send, literal boxes of biological things like, skulls to different schools and develop activities for that. They've made interactive games for kids to play to learn about, I think, time, like timing of evolution and stuff. So wide variety of things. Yeah. Make sure they're credible and feasible and all that, right?
And I think if applicants have an interest in contributing to current outreach, education and outreach programs that NIMBioS has, I assume that NIMBioS, I think that NIMBioS would be supportive of that.
Yeah, but I mean, make sure it's more than just like, oh, me too.
Yes, yeah.
Chris, you can say some
ideas that can be implemented. Yes.
I was just going to jump in here. This is Chris Welsh. I'm the deputy director here at NIMBioS, and you know, a strong proposal, often somebody can indicate that they're aware of what has already gone on here at NIMBioS. So reviewing the NIMBioS webpage is very useful to do. And when you're looking at the types of outreach activities that we already do, that's one area that you can be looking to tie into. We have a summer research experience for undergraduates that we do every summer. And a lot of times our postdocs get involved with a particular project with that. And it would be a project that was tied in with the expertise of the postdoc that would have a small group of undergraduates that are working on it. So that helps make a stronger proposal.
Chris, do you have other suggestions for good proposals?
Well, really the research question is the most important thing. I think you already touched on that having a good project idea is the most important thing. And then we are always looking for information in the proposal that shows that you're likely to be successful in conducting that project. We get a lot of proposals that come through that maybe they're a little overly ambitious in what might be able to be accomplished in a 2-year postdoc. So it's a good idea to make clear what kind of a timeline you think you're going to have to complete your project. That's some of the things that we really look into. I think there also came up about the travel budget for postdocs, and it is $3,000 for each year of the postdoc. And for those, we give the postdoc quite a lot of leeway in terms of how they might use that $3,000 budget. We do end up approving where you're going to go, but it's more or less if it looks like it's something that's good for your career and it's going to help NIMBioS in terms of getting information on what you're doing out to the scientific community, then we just go ahead with it.
So there's a question about, do you need to mention timeline and budget? So not budget, because you really don't have one other than the travel budget. But timeline could strengthen it, yeah. I mean, not like week 3 I'll do this, but sort of, over the first few months I'll do this.
Yeah, you want it to be clear that you have a concept of how long it's going to take to complete your project, and some plan for how you're going to approach it.
I mean, if you're just going to just run MaxEnt or something, I don't think that'd be competitive, right? So, I mean, yeah, don't just be a user of software, but if you're doing something new with your biological data.
Yeah, and I don't, the way the ad was written and the conversations that I had with NIMBioS faculty, my sense is that there is no preference for simulations versus data, biological data, I don't know, NEON or other data, GBIF, other data already available. So not already available, but available and real data, not virtual simulations. So yeah, so the applied versus theoretical, equally sought after and equally welcomed for this postdoc position.
I think that this call was actually written fairly broadly with the hope that we will be able to get the best candidate out there without really specifying whether they're being more experimental or theoretical or what exact area that project is going to be, as long as it ties in to spatial modeling and it kind of makes the connections at the interface between math and biology.
Chris, could you talk about the timeline, our timeline in terms of making decisions and announcing? Do you have that information? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
We don't have the dates set exactly for when the announcement will be. I think we'll be announcing by mid-February.
Okay.
Right. The way the process has normally worked, and I think will also work for this call, is that we take all the applications that come through, and we'll have an internal group that looks at them, but they will also get sent out to members of our external advisory board, who will make recommendations to us in terms of which ones they think are the most competitive. And then the NIMBioS leadership team will act on those recommendations. And so that process takes a little while. We usually end up giving the board several weeks to actually look over everything, and then we have to schedule a call where we discuss it with them. But I would guess that the announcements, that the decisions will be made by mid-February.
Thank you.
So one thing to note is on the NIMBioS website, we have a PDF of where postdocs have ended up, right? Because I mean, part of this is training for something else. It's not a permanent position. And so you can sort of see if this sort of leads to sort of outcomes that you like for your career. I'm just going to find that.
I can, two other things, general things with NIMBioS postdocs. One, you do come in with your own project that you've set up, the one that's been approved, and that's your primary project. But we also hope that every one of our postdocs will develop some side projects with either other postdocs here or with faculty around campus, or even people who are external to the organization. So we're always looking for people to be broader than just that one project.
The question, how many applications do we receive, more or less?
It varies every year and with every call. This one, our usual calls are much broader than this. This one I'm guessing will be a little bit fewer, but I can't really put a number on it.
I'm guessing at least 8 from the call.
It's always hard to put a number on it even this early, because most of the applications will come in the last 2 days before the deadline.
Yeah.
And there is no bonus for getting them in a week early. Well, I guess another thing related to being a postdoc here is, we talked about you having a $3,000 travel budget for you to go other places. We do also have some money that we use for what we call our short-term visitor program, which is really designed now for a postdoc to have somebody come here for a couple of days to help advise them, work with them on a project. So it's a way to sort of think of it as having travel money, but it's not for you to go somewhere. It's for you to have somebody else come here to work with you, for a couple of days to a week. So that's one of the perks of being a NIMBioS postdoc.
Yeah, well, while discussing perks, we'll get to the question in a second. We also have postdoc vocational training, right? So like writing teaching statements, writing research statements, how to review papers, how to run a lab, dealing with software, right? Because it's a cool situation where you have a whole bunch of postdocs who are the same career stage in the same place. And so we can have you help each other. You can have your mentors help you. So you're more competitive for getting jobs and have a community built that way. That's one thing to work on. So there's a question about if we do simulation, do you put our codes in the appendix? I'm not sure if we allow an appendix in the proposals. Do we, Chris?
Well, we certainly don't ask for it. I'm not sure we necessarily dock somebody for including it, but yeah, generally we're looking to have all the applications come in essentially the same format, so that there's no leg up for somebody for sort of bypassing the page limits by putting in more. So generally I'd say no, we don't really need to have the codes in an appendix.
But I like the fact that you're thinking about open source. That's good.
When of course you're working with data that's already available, and one thing that the board has often come down on people for is talking about using data, but not really specifying where that data is going to come from, or they may specify where it's going to come from, but not really making clear that they will have access to it. So it's good to make clear in your application that you know where the data is that you're going to want to use in your project.
So there's another question. What does spatial emphasis mean? How will that be operationalized in the evaluation? So I think that's for you, Mona.
Yes, I would say it's a, as Chris mentioned it, it's a broad ad announcement. So very broadly defined. It has to have a spatial component. The proposal has to have a spatial component. And yeah, we don't have, I'm not part of the evaluation process. We don't, and I don't think there will be a criterion this many points for, for having a spatial component in there. But if the proposal doesn't have a spatial component, obviously it doesn't get ranked or evaluated it doesn't get evaluated well. So I would say if the question has a spatial component, if the question you are investigating has a spatial component, then you are good. If the question has maybe a secondary potential spatial application, it may not be that great, or that it may not fit this ad that well, this announcement.
And I'm not sure about spatial. Like if you're thinking about like cell position within a tumor or something like that, I'm not sure if that's in scope for this. There's some discussion about that. I doubt it, but
yes, no, that let's say it's at organismal and above level.
One thing they come up with postdoc hires is spousal accommodations or things like that. And we don't formally have any spousal accommodations for postdocs. That said, if you do get the offer and need something like that, or just general questions, you can ask me or ask Chris. We can't say, oh yeah, we'll get your spouse a job, but we can poke around and see what we can find for her or him. And try to link you to resources here. Other questions about NIMBioS? Tennessee? If you ask where is Tennessee exactly, you failed the interview.
Okay, so there's a question. Does the call emphasize GIS or simulation slash simulation based methods over more theoretical models? Again, I would say no. If the theoretical models are addressing a question that is spatial in nature, doesn't have to be a GIS based simulation, GIS or simulation based method. So yes, theoretical models are welcomed. As long as they answer or they investigate questions that are spatial in nature to some degree. So we are not looking for specific skills, GIS versus theoretical models, virtual species versus real species, none of that. We are not leaning over one or the other.
So is there more than one position open for the spatial postdoc? No, there's just one.
Sadly.
and actually, I would say that we were only planning for one.
Oh, that's a good point. Right. But
if we end up with two just really outstanding candidates, there is a possibility that NIMBioS would look at taking two from the pool rather than one. But the initial plan is just to take one. Yeah, I mean, with the NIMBioS funding cycle the way it is, our base NSF funding goes through August 2018, I think. And so we're trying to get postdocs on board now who will be able to finish their 2-year postdoc, within our base period, and plus we're expecting a no-cost extension that would cover that. But so if we wait, 6 months to do another call, I think the funding is a little uncertain at that point when you're going beyond 2018. So don't count necessarily on another call 6 months from now. Could happen, but right now we're not planning it that way. We don't necessarily separate out based on that. I can say that over the years when the board has looked through the applications, it's been more of a tendency to look for people who are really going to benefit from this postdoc and not necessarily be somebody who's already had multiple postdocs and maybe is already in the position where they'd be looking at a faculty job instead of another postdoc. So we don't necessarily rule people out one way or the other, but I don't think we have a bias that would penalize somebody who's a new PhD versus somebody who's looking at a second postdoc. Yeah, it is important to look at the the guidelines that are on the website for how to apply and follow those guidelines. We get a lot of applications where somebody just sends in a CV and that doesn't cut it. So yeah, do follow the guidelines. And one other thing, just having sat in on a number of the board meetings, I can say that often when the board is looking through an application, there's sort of a section there where you're doing your problem statement and you have some discussion about the background of the project, showing that you have a good understanding of the literature associated with the background of your project is a good thing to do in your application.
And I'm pasting a link to the board so you can see who comprises the board.
Yeah, on the website does have, I think it's exactly how you get to it now. It might be under governance on the board on our website. Can take you to a listing of all the people who are on our advisory board.
Note that the salary is $51K. So even though there was a dispute recently about like postdoc overtime pay and what's required and stuff, you're clearly above that threshold anyway. So it's $51K. Don't worry about it. So does the call also seek research focused on more basic ecological research, or is applied work also welcomed? So Mona?
Yes, both are welcomed. Meaning, an application that is basic science, more theoretical, simulations theory, is not ranked higher or lower than applied work. So the nature of the work does not influence ranking. The quality of the work proposed, the strength of the proposal, the aims or the objectives, and methods, and so on and so forth. The proposal is important, not the fact that the question is theoretical or applied.
Do watch that it's still math and biosynthesis, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And again, if some of you joined later, the math component, think of it broadly. Computational is also math. It's a broad definition of computation of math as well as biology, definition of biology.
And Chris, there's some ambiguity earlier. This is like a regular NIMBioS postdoc where they can't get empirical data, correct? They cannot gather their own data.
Yeah, that's one of the sort of things that we're tied to based on our original NSF funding, and this is coming out of that same pool of funds. So we don't really have the leeway to have people collecting new data.
So forget playing with the unmanned aerial system.
Why don't you waste your time with it? It's okay. You just can't get anything useful from it. There's also typically for NIMBioS postdocs an opportunity to do some teaching. And so if you want some teaching experience, not required, but if you want some teaching experience, that's been possible for postdocs in the past. Chris, are they still allowed to go on other funds to write grants, or is that not going to work with the timeline?
We do, it is possible for postdocs here to be PIs on a grant proposal, and the limitation is that we can't charge that kind of work to our NSF budget, so we just charge it to our own UT account. But yes, postdocs in this position will still be able to write grants if they're able to, and we would love to have people be successful with writing some grants, and particularly running through NIMBioS. That is a way to extend the postdoc, is if you get the funding to keep it going.
So the question is, what are the teaching opportunities? Intro survey courses, higher level undergrads, or specialized major, non-major courses, or grad student courses? I don't remember what people, Chris, do you remember what people have taught in the past?
Yeah, most of the people who have taught have been teaching math courses. But the way the teaching part works is it's really, we have a lot of postdocs who come through who have been TAs in various courses as graduate students, and they feel like they've already got enough teaching experience, and so they just focus on their research while they're here. And then we've had other postdocs come through who, looking longer term for faculty positions, they want to have some more teaching experience. So it's more, what courses do they feel like they're comfortable, qualified to teach? And then we work with the department here to what classes can they do that will fit into what the department might need. So I'd say it's really pretty open, and it depends on the expertise of the postdoc in terms of what they might teach.
And many departments have sort of catch-all course numbers where it's, EB 400, a course in evolutionary ecology, and then you can design what you would do within that.
So another thing with being a NIMBioS postdoc, of course, is that we do have a lot of activities here, a lot of working groups and a lot of workshops and tutorials where we have, hundreds of people coming through, a lot of top scientists coming through here every year. And our postdocs do have an opportunity to interact with those people while they're here, whether it's at a reception after the first day of a working group, or whether it's connecting with people over breakfast or lunch while they're here. Just, again, talking about the perks of being at NIMBioS, that's one of them, is you get to meet a lot of people, a lot of key people, make a lot of good contacts that will help you down the road.
We've had something like over 6,000 different visitors in the past 8 years, right, Chris?
Yeah.
And so if you're here for 2 years, and that includes repeat people, right? So there's a good chance of you meeting the person you want. And if not, you can pay to fly them out, perhaps. So,
Okay.
Can postdocs organize a workshop?
Yeah, postdocs are allowed to be organizers, co-organizers of both working groups and workshops. And we've had a number who have done quite a good job with that.
So I don't think a working group would qualify as outreach because you're just talking to other scientists. Unless it's somehow like synthetic where you brought in educators or practitioners in the field.
Yeah. And that's probably true for workshops also, but one place where there would be a difference for outreach, which actually hasn't happened a lot yet, but we're hoping to build it up, is having more virtual tutorial type activities. We have the setup for you to be able to do something where you don't necessarily have everybody coming here, but you'll have all the participants who are tying in virtually while you're presenting or going through, you know, a set of models that people might be interested in learning about. So that might be an area for outreach that hasn't been done as much here yet.
We have had some. We had one postdoc who wrote an R package, and so he, you know, had part of a day of a tutorial talking about his R package. Actually, that happened with a few postdocs. So is that sort of outreach possibility too?
Okay, so there's a question about the research proposed. So the question is it necessary that research pitches under this call have a very concrete empirical data component? I guess this goes back to our simulations preferred over real data analysis, our empirical questions, theoretical questions preferred over applied research. And again, there's no preference for one or the other. So just be comfortable to propose one or a couple, actually, for two, depending how big that question is or that objective is, 1-2 objectives for your 2-year postdoc. Be very comfortable to propose to do completely fully applied research or completely fully simulation work. Be comfortable to propose to do a combination of the two. Just keep in mind that we are looking for, again, and we are repeating this, but we are looking for, as much as possible, for a combination of math and biology.
And not gathering your own empirical data.
And unfortunately, or actually fortunately, for 2 years, it's better to sit down and analyze data than invest time collecting new data. So yes, collecting new data is not allowed under this call.
Yeah, I don't have a nice long list of the goods and bads of a proposal. They just sort of pop into my mind as we're going through the various questions here. But I mean, it boils down to the most important thing is really doing a good job of specifying and explaining what your research question is going to be and how you're going to go about addressing it. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have all the details on every model that's going to be used or anything like that, but showing that you have an idea where you're going, you know your question, and you have an idea how you want to approach it. That's the number one most important thing for applications. And then, of course, we also want to see, you know, the documentation that says that you really are a strong candidate, that you've got what it takes to be an independent researcher here and carry out that work. And then showing further that you're going to really be able to make the connections to NIMBioS and be involved here, you know, potentially be involved with other postdocs, and that you're interested in meeting with people from groups. That kind of thing is always a strength. It's much stronger to have an application from somebody who sounds like they have looked at what NIMBioS is and they really have, you know, a strong interest in being here, versus somebody who hasn't really checked out the NIMBioS webpage at all, doesn't really know what NIMBioS does. They have a decent project, but they're not really making the connections that we'd like to see.
And one piece of advice, Chris and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as you write or as you finalize your proposal, think about your audience. It's not going to be Brian, it's not going to be me, it's going to be the board of advisors. So, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Brian and Chris, I think you should envision your proposal being read and evaluated by a broad group of people. So it has to make sense to other people, not to the 2 mentors you have in mind, maybe, that you'd like to work with.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We make an effort to assign your request to board members who have some expertise in that area, but it's not guaranteed that every one of them will. So, but they do recognize good science, and they recognize, a well-explained project when they see it. So doing that part of it in a way that even somebody who's not an expert in the subject area, in a way that they will understand it, that makes for a stronger application. Yeah, the question about how many board members will read each proposal, 3 to 5 is about right. Yeah, it depends somewhat on how many applications come through. If there's a whole lot of applications, then it'll be more like 3 per board member. But if it's a smaller number, then it potentially be up to 5 members reading each one.
And will Mona be reading them this round?
Yeah, Mona will be taking a look at them too.
Okay.
I don't know if Mona's aware of how much she'll put into it yet, but she will have some input to NIMBioS in terms of which ones look stronger to her.
Yes, and my understanding is that my role would be of kind of providing feedback after the board of advisors rank the proposals. That was my understanding.
There's no interview stage. So you'll have in your office your own Linux desktop. There's also the spatial biology lab computers, which Mona could talk about more. There's an in-house NIMBioS, a small cluster for training and stuff. There's a Newton cluster on campus that has, I think, a few thousand nodes. Let me look it up. And then there's possibly linking out to clusters at Oak Ridge. And so Mona, for the spatial lab, what do you folks have?
So the spatial lab, Eric Carr is in charge of getting the computation abilities there. But I think what we've and I could get to the list. I think what we've agreed on is 3 to 5 stations, just high but still desktop stations, and then NIMBioS access to NIMBioS servers. And from discussions I've had with Eric and Colleen, NIMBioS director, there's the computation power is there, and we won't have problems storing, analyzing large data sets. So I'm pretty confident. I'm not yet in Knoxville. I'll be there in January, but I'm pretty confident we'll be able to analyze large data sets without problems.
Hello, this is Eric Carr. I thought I'd jump in. I've been listening.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've done with all of our postdocs is push them to go ahead and go through the Exceed process to get a starter account. Because the nice thing about once you start that relationship and get your first grant in to get computational resources there, it is something you can take with you. Being associated with the University of Tennessee, we have Exceed resources. Exceed is the NSF computational center that provides high-performance computing across the country. Because of the special relationship of UT having Exceed resources, we actually have some priority ways of getting access to certain computational resources through Exceed. You also have to realize that Oak Ridge National Laboratories is here, and there are several GIS and spatial and ecological computing groups at ORNL. So there really are plenty of places to work with computational people, including right above us where Jack Dongaro's group is that does the top 100 computing ranking. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Eric.
Some of the questions between this call and the other call, how many postdocs will be based at NIMBioS? We have 6 right now, and that's dropping down as they get jobs, right? So, I mean, would you expect like 4 or so, Chris? What do you think?
I was going to say through 2018 with these two positions would probably be more like 7 unless
Okay.
people go early. And the other thing that we're anticipating is going to happen more and more is that there will be postdocs who are connected to various faculty across campus and who may have funding that's not through NIMBioS, but they have projects that are, you know, sort of math biology related, who would do well interacting with the postdocs that are here. And so we expect that a number of those will end up having offices over here, and, you know, us looking at them as NIMBioS postdocs, but them not being paid by NIMBioS, thinking of it that way.
They still can get the free coffee.
Yes. One thing that we didn't touch on at all is letters of reference. And we do expect every applicant to have 3 letters of reference that get mailed in separately by the people writing the references.
One question we had on email was, can they talk to someone about that, or just sort of harass their letter writers? So how will they know if someone hasn't turned a letter in as an applicant?
After the application deadline, we'll be going through and compiling everything, and we will be sending the applicants a notice that says, you know, we have your application and we have these 2 letters of reference, we're missing this one. And then it'll be up to the applicant to prompt that person to get it in. We do want everything in by the deadline, but yeah, occasionally it's beyond your control that somebody hasn't gotten theirs in yet. So we kick it back to you and say, make this, you know, remind this person to get that into to us as quick as they can. And, you know, letters of reference, it really does help for your person writing your letter of reference if they have an idea what the project you're proposing is going to be, so that they can say something in their letter about, you know, how well qualified they think you are to carry out that project.
It varies. But I mean, they go to department seminars. So the EB department seminars, we have 2 or 3 NIMBioS postdocs who come regularly because that's their area of interest. They go to microbiology, they go to geography seminars. I don't know about how much interaction they have with Oak Ridge. Chris, do you know?
We have not had as much interaction with Oak Ridge as we would like to see. So that's, you know, it's an area for people to get more involved, I would say. But, you know, Oak Ridge is close, but it's 35, 40-minute drive, and that does discourage people, I think, from being back and forth all the time.
Yeah, but typically NIMBioS postdocs are welcome in the community, and they go to department stuff and the holiday parties and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not at all unusual for NIMBioS postdocs to get connected with the lab of faculty members on campus and to attend those lab meetings. It's as a routine basis.
Yeah.
Can the postdocs, I'm sorry, I was just thinking of a possible question. Can the postdocs attend working groups, or are the working groups close to the members that form that working group?
Yeah, so NIMBioS working groups, which are our smaller groups of 10 to 15 people that come in and multiple times, you know, usually three times over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. The participants there are already preset. We don't add people to them through any kind of an open application process. So what happens with those, if we have a postdoc who fits well with the topic of a working group and is interested in participating in it, then usually that postdoc talks to me. I talk to the organizers of the group. If we have a postdoc who's interested, I let them know give them the postdoc CV and a copy of the project that they're working on while they're here, and we let the organizers decide if they really want to add that person in. But if they do, and there's a good connection, then it is possible for a postdoc to become a member of one of those working groups. For workshops, there's an open application process for our workshops. So if our postdoc is interested in being involved in one of those, they apply just like anyone else, and of course get some priority in terms of being able to participate. And with a workshop or a seminar series of anything where there's somebody giving a presentation upstairs, if you're not necessarily involved in the whole workshop, but you just want to see that one particular talk, we have room for our postdoc to go up and sit in the back of the room and watch that presentation. So we do like the postdocs to be as involved as they can in our activities, but working groups are kind of a special case because they're a set group of people where the group interaction is a big piece of how successful they're going to be, and sometimes you don't want to put somebody else into that group, especially if they're already at the second or third meeting of the group.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a case-by-case thing, and it's open, and it's just something we discuss, the postdoc and I and the organizer discuss about how it's going to work.
I mean, typically there's a lot of ecology and evolution and then math, like people who are doing some biology but come from math. There's some disease postdocs. I don't know if the mix is going to change much in the future. What's your sense, Chris?
Yeah, it's not going to change a whole lot except with the addition of the two new ones we're talking about, the spatial bio person, which good chance it's going to end up being more of on the ecology side. The system bio one is a good chance that's going to be more below organism level type work. So, but yeah, I don't think the mix is going to change a whole lot, and it tends to be, out of 7, you'd figure there'd probably be about 5 that are more on the ecology side and 2 that are on the cell molecular research side. But that can change.
And there's some who come from like biology mainly backgrounds, and they come from a math or stats but mainly background, and those are very different academic cultures. That's why we have NIMBioS to help synthesize that. But in terms of vocational training, it's very different expectations, and we can take that into account.
Actually, every year we do have a series of seminars that are given by what we call our postdoctoral distinguished invited visitors, which means that the postdocs get together and decide which, usually about 3 people they would really like to see come in and give a seminar at NIMBioS. And that's done separately from the short-term visit program and all that kind of thing. It's a chance to identify the top people in a field and try and get, using the NIMBioS name and some context, to talk to those people and have them come and present and meet with all of our postdocs while they're here.
All right, well, thank you all. If you have more questions, shoot us an email. When you get your offer and want to learn more about stuff or bring up other things, give us an email and say, hey, I would like to come, but what about? And we'll talk to you.